These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake.
The View erupted into complete chaos. Karoline Leavitt dropped bombshells that sent the hosts scrambling for cover. The atmosphere shifted from tense to utterly volatile in mere seconds, sparking a firestorm of reactions nationwide. Today, we're diving into exactly what happened, why Leavitt's words are dominating headlines, and what this means for The View moving forward. If you've been wondering what triggered this storm, hold tight because this debate didn't just cause some tension, it rattled the entire foundation of the show. Leavitt, serving as the White House press secretary, walked straight into hostile territory. From the moment she sat down, it was clear she wasn't there to play nice. But the hosts? They weren't prepared for the heat she was about to bring. Her presence alone sparked immediate backlash, with media personalities rushing to discredit her, questioning her qualifications, and even taking jabs at her rapid rise in politics.
The View hosts have got themselves into hot water again after they did the very thing they purport to be against, undermining women's success. Joy Behar stunned viewers when she said Donald Trump's press secretary, 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt, only secured her position because of her good looks.
I think, Sarah, she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though, it's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
The comment was bizarre, especially coming from Joy Behar, who is as woke as they come and brands herself as a feminist champion. This online commentator stated, "Disgusting. Joy Behar of The View accuses Karoline Leavitt of being hired solely because Donald Trump thought she was..." They thought they had her cornered, but they were wrong. Instead of retreating, Leavitt flipped the narrative on its head, turning the backlash into a glaring example of media bias. Suddenly, it wasn't her credibility on trial, it was theirs. Viewers watched as the hosts, usually in full control, struggled to regain their footing. The power dynamic shifted, and the tension was palpable. But things took a sharper turn when Joy Behar, a longtime advocate for women's rights, made a remark that stunned even her own audience. A comment so contradictory that it immediately raised concerns about her messaging consistency. The backlash wasn't just from Leavitt's supporters, it came from those who usually align with The View. And just like that, the gloves were off. The verbal punches kept coming, leaving one huge question in the air. Did The View just seal its own fate? Joy Behar's wild accusation backfired instantly. Instead of acknowledging Karoline Leavitt's real professional experience, Behar reduced her success to her looks, sparking a fierce debate. The hypocrisy was clear. Media figures who claimed to empower women were suddenly using the same tactics they condemn, and people noticed. As soon as Behar spoke, social media erupted. Critics highlighted the glaring double standard. How can public figures claim to support gender equality while belittling female professionals based on personal, superficial reasons? The contradiction was impossible to ignore, and Karoline didn't back down. Instead, she flipped the script and called out the selective outrage of mainstream media. This wasn't just about The View, it was about something bigger. Her fiery response revealed deep flaws in how political and media narratives are controlled, exposing how biased and manufactured some discussions really are. As expected, the conversation spiraled beyond daytime television. Commentators from other networks jumped in, analyzing the incident and debating its impact on women in politics and media. But it didn't stop there. The debate spread into political circles, with politicians and media watchdogs taking sides. And Karoline? She wasn't finished. She didn't just address the personal attack, she attacked the bigger picture. She challenged the entire media ecosystem, questioning how ideological bias shapes political coverage. She warned that the era of media-driven narratives shaping public opinion is on its way out. According to Leavitt, traditional media has built its empire on sensationalism and manufactured. The controversy was clear, but the tides are changing. With public trust in journalism at an all-time low, the old ways of controlling the conversation aren't effective anymore. She made it clear that in today's world, substance and policy discussions are becoming the focus. For those still relying on outdated media tactics, Leavitt had one straightforward warning: adapt or get left behind. Whoopi Goldberg jumped in, trying to shift the narrative, but it only heated things further. she tried to steer the conversation toward the role of wokeness in civil rights progress, claiming that without it, many people, including Karoline Leavitt, wouldn't have the opportunities they do today. Without that wokeness, you might not have that job, Whoopi argued, reinforcing the idea that activism has opened doors. But Karoline? She wasn't convinced. She immediately pushed back, challenging the comparison and questioning if modern activism truly mirrors the principles of historic civil rights movements. Leavitt didn't hold back. She called out the contradictions in today's activism. How can a movement that preaches inclusivity and open discourse demand ideological uniformity? She pointed out that many political narratives today aren't about expanding rights, they're about controlling the conversation. And just like that, the debate turned into something much larger. The discussion moved from a single moment on The View to a broader cultural battle over how political terminology is shaping public perception. Karoline made it clear, silencing opposition in the name of progress is the opposite of real progress. Whoopi stood firm, arguing that societal change requires active advocacy, but Karoline countered sharply. True advocacy should embrace all voices, not silence those who disagree. She challenged the entire approach of modern activism, stating that demanding absolute ideological alignment undermines genuine discourse. At this point, the tension in the studio was palpable.
Behar may have your jobs because of wokeness, but do not smear a competent professional woman like Karoline Leavitt.
The audience was riveted. Social media was ablaze, and viewers nationwide were picking sides. The battle lines were clear. Was wokeness a force for progress, or had it become a weapon for censorship? And if you thought that was the height of the debate, think again. Whoopi wasn't done. She pushed the conversation further, steering it away from media trust and plunging into the polarizing world of identity politics. The fallout from this fiery exchange was far from finished. The debate over political discourse in mainstream media was just beginning, and after this showdown, it's clear neither side is backing down anytime soon. Whoopi Goldberg deflected Karoline Leavitt's concerns about the decline in media credibility and shifted the focus to historical inequalities. She argued that wokeness had been key in breaking down barriers, stating, "Because Black people couldn't get into colleges, because women couldn't get into the colleges they wanted, this is all women." But Karoline? She wasn't letting that go. She stood firm, challenging whether modern wokeness truly matches its original goals or if it's been twisted into a divisive tool. Whoopi responded, doubling down on her defense of wokeness. She insisted that Leavitt simply didn't understand it, saying, "It's not a bad thing to be. That's why we fought for you to stand at that podium." She highlighted figures like Karine Jean-Pierre, showcasing how progress has opened doors for diverse leaders. But Karoline saw things differently. She fired back with a bold statement. Modern wokeness isn't about equality anymore. It's been weaponized to enforce ideological conformity, silencing those who don't fall in line. And just when it seemed like the debate had reached its peak, things took an even sharper turn. Whoopi's attempt to redirect the conversation failed to land as expected. Suddenly, the discussion veered into an even more controversial topic: claims made on The View about Elon Musk and supposed political threats. Karoline wasn't going to let that pass. She called out the panel for pushing baseless accusations while mocking conservatives for alleged conspiracy theories. The irony was undeniable. She pointed out how the mainstream media's narratives have continually shifted, adapting to fit evolving political agendas. And she wasn't finished. She reminded them that for years, legacy media has controlled public perception, misrepresenting political figures, smearing reputations, and shaping Biden narratives without facing accountability. But now, the landscape has shifted. Millions of Americans are no longer buying what traditional media is selling. Karoline stressed that viewers aren't simply accepting the media's version of reality anymore. They're looking for independent sources, alternative viewpoints, and demanding truth over spin. The message was loud and clear. Mainstream media's control over public perception is weakening, and Karoline Leavitt just put them on notice. For decades, The View, along with other legacy media giants, has operated with little opposition, molding public opinion while silencing voices that didn't fit their narrative. But this time, the script was flipped. Karoline Leavitt's fearless challenge marked a major shift. proving that media narratives are no longer going unchallenged. Leavitt's demand for media accountability is forcing legacy outlets to answer for their reporting in ways they never had to before. And it's clear they aren't happy about it. Sure, she's young, but Karoline's bold, no-nonsense approach is already shaking up the White House press. Pool. And now, she's announced a game-changing move that's set to turn the media world upside down. Her latest bombshell, a complete shakeup in White House press briefings. Leavitt introduced a brand new media section specifically designed to hold traditional outlets accountable for biased reporting and misinformation about President Trump. And she didn't hold back. "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or misleading," she declared. For years, organizations like the Associated Press and the White House Correspondents Association have controlled access to the press room, deciding who asks tough questions and who gets ignored. But that era of unchecked control, it's officially crumbling. In a historic move, 2 front-row seats once reserved for White House staff will now go to independent journalists willing to challenge mainstream narratives. And if that wasn't enough to send shockwaves through the media world, Karoline went further. She restored press passes for 440 journalists, reporters whose credentials were revoked under the Biden administration. It was a move many hailed as a win for press freedom and transparency. But the View panel, they weren't impressed. Instead of celebrating a more open media landscape, the hosts dismissed the change, arguing that traditional media should remain the dominant voice in the room. The message was clear. They weren't just against Leavitt's policies, they were against any challenge to the status quo. But the reality? The old media power structure is changing fast, whether The View and its allies like it or not. A new wave of independent journalism is rising, and the days of legacy media calling all the shots? Those days may be numbered. Sunny Hostin mocked the idea that new media reporters could be qualified for White House briefings, implying only legacy media should have that authority. Whoopi Goldberg quickly joined in, warning that without proper media oversight, people might just say anything without accountability. But here's the irony. Critics immediately pointed out that legacy media has been doing exactly that for years. For decades, mainstream outlets, including The View, have been accused of pushing selective narratives, controlling public perception, and silencing dissenting voices. Now that the power balance is shifting, the debate over who controls the narrative is just beginning. And judging by The View's outraged response, not everyone is ready for this change. Suddenly, The View wants to talk about journalistic standards, but only now that Karoline Leavitt is holding them accountable. Whoopi Goldberg tried to redefine wokeness, blending it with civil rights history, instead of addressing how it plays out in today's political and media landscape. And just like that, the conversation veered away from Leavitt's original argument.
Yeah, I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because Black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not Black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world.
Karoline calmly and confidently emphasized that when people enter the country illegally, it's not merely a policy issue. It's a matter of upholding the law. She stressed that the focus should be on consistent, fair enforcement of the law, not politicizing it for the sake of sensational headlines. The panel, caught off guard, attempted to pivot, but Karoline had already regained control of the conversation. Rather than falling into their trap, she redirected the discussion to highlight the importance of immigration reform that respects the rule of law while addressing humanitarian concerns. The silence in the room was tangible, and social media exploded with reactions, praising Karoline for maintaining composure and sticking to her message. For The View hosts, this wasn't just about policy, it was a clash of ideologies. Karoline Leavitt wasn't merely pushing back against their questions. She was challenging the entire media framework they'd built their empire on. This wasn't just about defending Trump administration policies. It was about holding mainstream media accountable for biases, selective narratives, and their refusal to allow perspectives outside the liberal echo chamber. The more The View panel tried to corner her, the more she dismantled their attacks with poise and logic. Clearly, Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with The View was a game changer. She refused to let the show dictate the narrative, instead flipping the script and exposing media bias, forcing them to face their role in shaping public opinion. Her unwavering stance on key issues and her ability to dismantle attacks with facts have made her a formidable presence. As the mainstream media continues to push back, it only proves her point about their disconnect from reality and growing irrelevance. This is just the start of a larger battle for control of the narrative, and Karoline appears poised to lead the charge. As viewers and critics continue to weigh in, mainstream media dominance looks increasingly uncertain. Legacy outlets, used to shaping public discourse without challenge, now struggle to keep up as new voices like Karoline's demand accountability. This shift in power could have lasting effects on politics, media, and how we consume information. Stay tuned. This story is far from over. Karoline calmly and confidently emphasized that when people enter the country illegally, it's not merely a policy issue, it's a matter of upholding the law. She stressed that the focus should be on consistent, fair enforcement of the law, not politicizing it for the sake of sensational headlines. The panel, caught off guard, attempted to pivot, but Karoline had already regained control of the conversation. Rather than falling into their trap, she redirected the discussion to highlight the importance of immigration reform that respects the rule of law while addressing humanitarian concerns. The silence in the room was tangible, and social media exploded with reactions praising Karoline for maintaining composure and sticking to her message. For The View hosts, this wasn't just about policy, it was a clash of ideologies. Karoline Leavitt wasn't merely pushing back against their questions. She was challenging the entire media framework they'd built their empire on. This wasn't just about defending Trump administration policies. It was about holding mainstream media accountable for biases, selective narratives, and their refusal to allow perspectives outside the liberal echo chamber. The more The View panel tried to corner her, the more she dismantled their attacks with poise and logic. Clearly, Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with The View was a game changer. She refused to let the show dictate the narrative, instead flipping the script and exposing media bias, forcing them to face their role in shaping public opinion. Her unwavering stance on key issues and her ability to dismantle attacks with facts have made her a formidable presence. As the mainstream media continues to push back, it only proves her point about their disconnect from reality and growing irrelevance. This is just the start of a larger battle for control of the narrative, and Karoline appears poised to lead the charge. As viewers and critics continue to weigh in, mainstream media dominance looks increasingly uncertain. Legacy outlets, used to shaping public discourse without challenge, now struggle to keep up as new voices like Karoline's demand accountability. This shift in power could have lasting effects on politics, media, and how we consume information. It's clear the II's amateur days of unquestioned media influence are numbered. Independent journalists, alternative media sources, and public figures like Karoline Leavitt are proving that there is more than one side to the story, and more people are paying attention. These shifts are not just changing the media landscape, they are fundamentally altering how we engage with politics and societal issues. Stay tuned. This story is far from over.